They dedicate their lives to preserving nature and protecting visitors, but their work often comes with unseen dangers. They are park rangers, the often unsung heroes of national parks. In this video, we're telling the stories of 5 people who sacrificed everything in some of America's most breathtaking and unforgiving wilderness landscapes. It was the 1st of January 2012. For some people, the new year dawned with an air of celebration and maybe even hope. But for Margaret Anderson, it ended in an act of heroism that would forever remain intertwined with the history of Mount Rainier National Park. What happened that day revealed the depths of her character, the weight of her duty as a park ranger, and the senseless tragedy of a life cut short. At 34 years old, Margaret Anderson wasn't only a park ranger. She was known as a woman of remarkable warmth and unwavering commitment. Her love for the natural world shaped her path in life. After earning degrees in fisheries and wildlife biology and a master's in biology, Margaret joined the National Park Service in 2000. Her career took her from Bryce Canyon to Maryland's C&O Canal, and finally to Mount Rainier National Park, where she worked alongside her husband, Eric Anderson, also a ranger. A mother of 2 young daughters aged 1 and 3, was a law enforcement officer, but also a leader in the park's emergency medical program, teaching CPR and serving her community. She embodied a life of purpose and service. On the other side of this story was Benjamin Colton Barnes, a man whose life had spiraled into chaos. At 24 years old, Barnes was an Army veteran of the Iraq War, where he served as a communications specialist. After leaving the military under a cloud of disciplinary issues, including a DUI, he struggled to adjust to civilian life. His personal relationships deteriorated, his mental health frayed, and his fascination with firearms deepened. Barnes's ex-girlfriend, concerned for their child's safety, described his growing aggression and tendencies that indicated he was considering taking his own life. By the time New Year's Eve arrived, Barnes was homeless, estranged, and unstable. On New Year's Eve, Barnes was at a house party in Skyway, Washington. At some point during the night, he lost his temper and opened fire, injuring 4 people. Fleeing the scene, he made his way to the remote wilderness of Mount Rainier, carrying weapons, survivalist gear, and a volatile state of mind. On the morning of January 1st, 2012, Barnes sped through a checkpoint in the park, designed to ensure drivers had snow chains for safe travel. When a pursuing ranger called for backup, Margaret Anderson responded. She didn't know who Barnes was. She didn't know that he was dangerous, nor that he was on the run. Positioned strategically, Margaret blocked the road with her patrol vehicle, a decision made to protect visitors further up the mountain. As Barnes approached the roadblock, he executed a U-turn, exited his vehicle, and began firing a high-powered weapon. Margaret was struck before she could draw her firearm. Another ranger narrowly escaped injury and retreated under heavy fire. Despite the barrage, Margaret managed to alert authorities. By the time doctors could reach her, 34-year-old Margaret Anderson was dead, leaving behind 2 young daughters and a world of hurt for those who knew her. As for Barnes, he immediately abandoned his vehicle and fled on foot into the dense, snowy wilderness. The ensuing manhunt involved over 150 law enforcement officers, helicopters equipped with infrared technology, and ground teams braving treacherous conditions. The park was closed, its visitors sheltered and later evacuated as the search intensified. His body was discovered in a creek near the base of a waterfall the following day. He had succumbed to the elements after a night exposed to freezing temperatures in inadequate clothing. His death brought an end to the immediate danger, but left behind questions about the system that failed both him and his victims. Margaret's death was a devastating blow to her family, colleagues, and community. Her husband, Eric, was on duty elsewhere in the park when the tragedy unfolded. The loss of a wife, mother, and dedicated ranger left an indelible void. Park Superintendent Randy King described her as someone who made everybody safer, highlighting the profound impact of her work and her sacrifice. Randy Morganson's story begins with a life steeped in a love for the wilderness and a deep commitment to its protection. A man of the High Sierra, Randy dedicated nearly 3 decades of his life to serving as a backcountry ranger in California's Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. Yet, the summer of 1996 would bring an unsettling end to his journey, leaving behind a legacy marked by devotion, mystery, and tragedy. Randy was born in 1945 in Yosemite Valley. As such, he grew up immersed in the beauty of the American West. After graduating from Yosemite National Park's Valley School, he joined the National Park Service as a seasonal ranger. Randy's role was far from glamorous. Reapplying for his position every year, he worked without benefits or retirement plans. Yet, like many in his field, he wasn't in it for the money. His work was a labor of love, driven by a profound respect for the wilderness he called home. In 1996, at 51 years old, Randy Morganson was the most senior ranger in the High Sierra, his unmatched knowledge of Kings Canyon National Park making him an invaluable guide. Randy had a low-key demeanor and was a thoughtful man. He wanted to protect the parks and would often haul out sacks of trash left by visitors. His station at Bench Lake, perched above 10,000 feet, served as his remote base of operations. From there, he patrolled an 80-square-mile area, aiding hikers, rescuing the lost, and ensuring the wilderness remained unspoiled. Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks, jointly administered, are home to some of nature's most stunning features. Glacier-carved valleys, towering sequoias, fast-flowing rivers, and the rugged peaks of the Sierra Nevada. The park's remote backcountry is a haven for adventure seekers, with only a fraction of visitors venturing off designated trails. It was in this untamed expanse that Randy worked tirelessly. However, the 1996 season, Randy's 27th year as a park ranger, was unusual. Cracks were appearing in Randy's personal life. His marriage to his wife, Judy, had faltered. A brief affair with another ranger led to estrangement, and Judy had served him divorce papers that spring. Randy confided to colleagues that he sometimes questioned the value of his years of service. His depression, combined with the solitude of his role, painted a picture of a man grappling with inner turmoil. It was July 21st, 1996, when Randy left a note at his Bench Lake station, indicating he would be away for a few days. The man packed his gear, but left behind his revolver and ventured into the mountains he knew so well. Then silence. His failure to check in on schedule prompted a search, led by colleagues who viewed him as a mentor. The ensuing operation was one of the most exhaustive in the history of the National Park Service. Searchers scoured the park for weeks, employing helicopters, thermal imaging, search dogs, and nearly 100 personnel. But there was no trace of Randy. Recent rains had washed away any evidence, any print, any proof. His absence raised unsettling questions. Had he suffered a tragic accident? Had he chosen to vanish, burdened by despair? Or had he encountered foul play? Speculations swirled, but the search was eventually called off, leaving a void and unanswered questions. For years, the mystery endured. But then, in July 2001, 5 years after Randy's disappearance, a trail worker stumbled upon human remains near a creek in the Window Peak drainage. The discovery included a tattered shirt with an axe tool and his backpack, still buckled. A leg bone protruded from a boot partially submerged in water. Some speculated that Randy had fallen through a snow bridge, breaking his leg, and succumbed to his injuries and hypothermia. His body had remained hidden under ice during the initial search. However, the findings provided no clarity. Some, like author Eric Blame, speculated that Randy might have orchestrated his death to ensure his wife received the federal death benefit, a policy not granted when people end their own lives. Others viewed it as a tragic accident, emblematic of the dangers faced by those who dedicate their lives to the wilderness. No matter the case, Randy's legacy still endures in the peaks and trails of Kings Canyon. His name graces Mount Morganson, a tribute to his memory. For Jeff Christensen, a seasoned park ranger, the Rocky Mountain National Park was both a workplace and a passion. But one routine patrol in July 2005 would tragically become his last. leaving behind questions and a legacy of dedication. At 31 years old, Jeff Christensen was a man deeply connected to the mountains. Born and raised in Forest Lake, Minnesota, he developed a love for the outdoors that would define his life. After attending the University of Minnesota Duluth, he followed his dreams to Colorado, where he became an avid skier and mountaineer. For 7 winters, he served on the ski patrol at Winter Park Resort, honing his skills in backcountry survival. By 2002, Jeff joined the National Park Service as a seasonal ranger, a role that allowed him to blend his expertise with his passion for protecting the natural world. Jeff was a fit, competent man with a cheerful demeanor. In 2005, Jeff was a Rocky Mountain National Park ranger. The park, spanning 265,000 acres in north-central Colorado, was a haven of natural splendor. Its diverse environments range from forested valleys to the windswept tundra above 13,000 feet. The Mummy Range, where Jeff was last seen, exemplified the park's wild essence. The area's peaks, including Mount Chiquita and Ypsilon Mountain, challenged visitors with steep trails, loose rocks, and rapidly changing conditions. This untamed terrain, both stunning and unforgiving, was where Jeff embarked on his final patrol. It was July 29th when Jeff began a routine solo patrol to the Lawn Lake trailhead. A co-worker dropped him off at the Chapin Pass trailhead at 11 a.m. He was seen by visitors near the summit of Mount Chiquita in the early afternoon. He appeared to be in good spirits, cheerful, and moving quickly, which indicated his familiarity with navigating high-altitude terrain. However, he never returned to his station or checked in with dispatch that evening. When he failed to report for his shift the next morning, concerns grew, and a search was launched. The search for Jeff was a serious effort. Over 200 personnel scoured the park using helicopters and search dogs. However, locating someone in such an environment was a challenging job. Rescuers faced cliffs, unstable rocks, and sub-freezing nighttime temperatures. Reports of gunfire and radio clicks led searchers to focus on specific areas, but these clues ultimately yielded no results. It wasn't until 8 days later, on August 6th, that a hiker discovered Jeff's body near Spectacle Lakes, in a steep-walled basin between Ypsilon Mountain and Mount Chiquita. An autopsy revealed he had died on the same day he set out, between 6 p.m. and midnight. He had fallen and suffered a fatal skull fracture along with cuts and bruises. Investigators noted that Jeff had bandaged his head and walked some distance after the fall, which indicated he had fought for his life. His radio was found nearby, but with a dead battery. The investigation into his death highlighted several factors: the inherent dangers of high-altitude terrain, the unpredictability of solo patrols, and the limitations of existing communication tools. Recommendations included expanding the use of satellite phones, improving radio coverage, and establishing clearer protocols for solo ranger operations. However, park officials acknowledged that even the best precaution cannot eliminate all risks. Jeff's parents, Dale and Chris Christensen, traveled from Minnesota to Colorado during the search, clinging to hope until the end. In their grief, they took solace in knowing Jeff died doing what he loved, amidst the mountains he cherished. Park officials and colleagues echoed the same sentiments. It was the morning of October 6, 2024, when Park Ranger Kevin Grossheim received a distress call on Namakan Lake. Without wasting time, Kevin, a veteran ranger, embarked on what would become his final act of service. What followed was a heart-wrenching reminder of the dangers faced by those who dedicated their lives to protecting others. Kevin Grossheim was from Minnesota. At 55 years old, he had built a career that blended his love for nature with his passion for helping others. Starting as a seasonal ranger at Boston National Historical Park in 1993, Kevin's career spanned decades and multiple assignments, including Curacanti National Recreation Area and Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore. In 1996, he settled into his role as a commissioned law enforcement ranger at Voyageurs National Park, where he served for 23 years. Even more, Kevin was also a volunteer with the Kabetogama Fire Department, always ready to respond to emergencies. He was the kind of person who went above and beyond, a treasured member of his community. Voyageurs National Park, located on Minnesota's border with Canada, is a pristine expanse of lakes, forests, and streams. Spanning 340 square miles, it is a paradise for boating, camping, and wildlife enthusiasts. Namakan Lake, one of the park's 4 major lakes, is vast and remote, characterized by its rugged beauty and challenging conditions. Its waters, while inviting, can become treacherous under high winds and rough weather, as they did that fateful day. It was late morning on October 6, 2024, when Kevin received a call for help from a stranded family on Birch Cove Island. Their boat had been disabled by strong winds and waves reaching up to 6 feet. Kevin, an experienced boat operator and motorboat operator certification course instructor, set out to bring them to safety. Reaching the island, he successfully secured the family, a father and 2 sons, on board his National Park Service vessel. But as he navigated back to the mainland, the elements proved to be harsh and unrelenting. High winds and violent waters overwhelmed the boat, causing it to capsize. While the 3 family members managed to swim to shore, Kevin disappeared beneath the waves. When he didn't resurface, a search was launched immediately. It took 3 harrowing hours to find Kevin Grossheim. Sadly, he was dead. His body was recovered from Namakan Lake. Kevin's death left his colleagues and community in mourning. Flags were lowered to half-staff at state buildings and national parks in his honor. Governor Tim Walz acknowledged Kevin's sacrifice, calling him a dedicated ranger and public servant, known for his unwavering commitment to helping others. Tributes poured in, with friends and co-workers highlighting his bravery and selflessness. Despite his extensive experience and training, Kevin's loss illustrated how unpredictable and unforgiving nature can be. Voyageurs National Park Superintendent Bob DeGrosse remembered Kevin as much loved by all. His passing left a void that the National Park Service struggled to alleviate. An investigation was launched to better understand the circumstances of the accident. Initial reports suggested that the rough conditions caused the boat to nosedive and overturn. The tragedy also prompted reflection on safety protocols, as Kevin's death highlighted the vulnerabilities of even the most seasoned professionals. On June 7, 2024, an event meant to celebrate the universe's wonders turned into a moment of profound loss at Bryce Canyon National Park, and Park Ranger Tom Lorig was at its center. At 78 years old, Tom Lorig was a man of remarkable dedication and compassion. Originally from Washington State, he built a career as a registered nurse in the Seattle area, serving the community for 40 years. But his passion for nature and history drew him to the National Park Service in 1968, beginning a second chapter of his life that would span decades. Over his career, Tom worked at 14 different national parks, including iconic sites like Badlands, Mount Rainier, Olympic, Klondike Gold Rush, Zion, Yosemite, and Carlsbad Caverns. He was especially fond of his time as a ranger at Dinosaur National Monument. Whether as a permanent seasonal or volunteer ranger, Tom was dedicated to forging deep connections between the public and the natural wonders he loved. In 2019, Tom was a park ranger at Bryce Canyon National Park. The park is located in southwestern Utah and is famous for its distinctive geological formations called hoodoos. These towering spires, carved over millennia by erosion, are painted in hues of red, orange, and white, creating stunning vistas. The park, situated at elevations ranging from 8,000 to 9,000 feet, is a place of breathtaking beauty and remoteness. Each year, its astronomy festival draws enthusiasts and families eager to experience the pristine night skies through telescopes, workshops, and constellation tours. On the evening of June 7th, Tom was volunteering at the festival, assisting visitors as they navigated the park's events. Around 11:30 p.m., while directing a guest to the shuttle bus, Tom tripped and fell, striking his head on a large rock. A nearby visitor discovered him unresponsive and immediately sought help from a law enforcement ranger. Despite the swift response from National Park Service personnel, medically trained bystanders, and Garfield County Emergency Services, efforts to revive him were unsuccessful. The aftermath of Tom's death rippled across the park, and the National Park Service community. Bryce Canyon Superintendent Jim Ireland paid tribute to Tom, emphasizing his role in connecting people with the park's beauty and history. The loss was deeply felt among his colleagues and the many visitors whose experiences had been enriched by his presence. Statements from officials and friends echoed his dedication, describing him as a beloved public servant whose passion for the parks left an indelible mark. Tom's decades of work spanned some of the most iconic landscapes in the national park system. In 2013, he even returned a historic sign to Carlsbad Caverns National Park, ensuring its place in the park's museum collection. This act, like his life's work, exemplified his commitment to the places he served and loved.